Hey guys, this is Maya Acting 4, Lip Sync, Dialogue, and Accents. Alright, so in this session we'll be animating some lip sync, and we'll animate some accents on the character's head. And we'll include a head turn and a blink to change the eye direction. The focus of this class is on lip sync and timing the accents properly, with the emphasis being on the vowels. You can use the audio I've included in the file, or you can download your own audio and import it into Maya. Some good websites to find audio are moviewaves.com and moviesoundclips.net. They basically just have a lot of audio clips, quotes from movies and TV shows and stuff like that. So it's really good to download audio clips like that to practice your lip sync, the character animation lip sync. The audio and animation has to be a minimum of 5 seconds long and less than 10 seconds long for this exercise. And if you want to download your own audio, in the file there is included an audio clip, so you just right click on your timeline, go to sound. Right now it's off, but if you go to On We Go, it's a clip from Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. But if you don't want to use that, you can go Edit, Delete by Type, and then just go to Sounds, and you'll see On We Go. You can just delete that, and click it and it'll delete it. And then to import your own sound, you just go File, Import, option box, and you just leave everything as it is and just click Import, and then navigate to your audio file. I suggest you use WAV files, and then once it's in your file, you may have to go right click on the timeline again and then just find it and turn it on. Okay, so first we'll discuss lip sync and get through that, and then we'll do the accents after. One thing you should know is that in production, if you're not already in animation production, usually the way it works is they do lip sync first. The lip sync department will animate the lip sync with the character not moving at all, just because it's easier and you can animate the mouth without all this animation happening, character moving around all over the place. Hard to see the mouth. So they animate the lip sync first, and then the animators get the characters with the lip sync done on it, and usually the scenes laid out by the layout department. And then they do the animation, all the body animation and acting. Us animators also do the facial animation. So it goes lip sync, body animation, and then facial animation. You don't want to do the facial animation before you do the body, because you won't know where to put the expressions. Alright, so let's start with lip sync. We'll turn on our audio file. Alright, so I've included this reference here from Preston Blair's cartoon animation book. This is a basic phonetic chart. So you can see this mouth shape is for an ah sound, A and I, any sound where you would open your mouth in that way. E, that's pretty much what we're going to use. This is like an ah sound. Ooh, that's good for you. It says you here. I would also use something like that for R sounds. And then the consonants, all the consonants including R. But this is the only thing I would really want to change on this chart is I wouldn't use this closed teeth mouth shape for R's. You'd want to use something between this shape and maybe this one down here. But these are great for W and Q. And M, B, and P, the mouth is closed. L, it's like A, but the tongue is up. And then F and V, the bottom lip is tucked into the teeth. So that's basically how we're going to animate lip sync, except we're not going to use this one for R. That's the only one I don't want to do. So let's show you an example of what we're going to come out with at the end of this. Something like this.
Everyone signed? Yes. Good. On we go.
Alright, so one thing I want to point out is that what you want to avoid when you're animating lip sync is the mouth popping and flickering too much. You don't want any kind of flickering, popping animation happening with the mouth. You want your mouth shapes to just sort of smoothly transfer from one to the other. Sometimes it's hard to do when a character speaks fast. It's a little tricky. Think of the Muppets, how the puppeteers animate the Muppets. Something like that, except we're going to get a little more intricate with the mouth shapes. But the timing is similar. Alright, so let's just start scrubbing over the animation. Now, one thing to remember with lip sync is that we want to place our keys, our mouth shapes. We want to animate our mouth shapes about a frame before the sound actually happens. If we scrub over this audio here, the first thing he says is everyone signed. So the first word we're going to animate is everyone, and the first letter is E. It's best to get out your headphones and listen to this because you'll drive everyone in the room nuts by scrubbing over this audio over and over again, but this is what it's like to animate lip sync. So you scrub over and you listen for that first sound. He's saying eh, but it's happening at frame 5. So what we're going to do is we're going to pose the mouth shape for E on frame 4. And the reason why we do this, we actually do the animation a frame before the sound occurs, is because in real life, actually it takes time for sound to travel from the origin of the sound, someone's mouth, to your ears. Now we're brought up this way and we don't really notice it, but the sound is actually delayed. The sound happens first and then we hear it after, right? If you want to prove this point, go ahead and animate all the sounds right as they occur on the timeline. Like put the mouth shapes right where you hear the sound, and then if you listen to it after, it actually appears to be late. So the basic workflow here for lip sync is to listen for the sound, and then go back one frame and put the mouth shape on the frame before it. So to get that E shape, that shape, we want to do something like this. If you select this mouth and you take a look in the channel box, there are some mouth shapes that are pre-done. So this is good for any kind of ooh or sound, or sometimes R. It says OR in the channel box, MP, and also B. I didn't put B there, but it's this one here, MP or B. It just gives us a closed lip. And then L, if you open the mouth, you won't be able to see the L unless you open the mouth, which you would if you're going to do an L. If you scrub over the L there, the tongue comes up. I'm just going to close the mouth back up again. And then if we use V, the V and F down here, where the bottom lip's tucked in, we have that already done. So for some of these mouth shapes you will have to create some combinations with some of these other expressions down here. We'll just take a look at that as we go. I'll do the first couple of words and then you guys can take it from there. So very important, key the mouth shape one frame before you actually hear the sound. Alright, so let's do the eh. So what we have to do is open the mouth first a little bit. And you'll notice on this rig, just from trial and error and playing with it, after it was built, we noticed that it's often handy to use the translate Y swirl just to get his mouth up a little bit. You just want to see those top teeth, the tip of the top teeth, for a lot of the mouth shapes. If you want him to be happy throughout his speech, you can just crank the smile up a little bit and just kind of keep that up while you combine some of the other mouth shapes. You may have to take it down for some of the other mouth shapes. In the example that we did, if you take a look at it again, he's not smiling until the end.
Everyone signed? Yes. Good. On we go.
So what we would do if you didn't want him to be smiling, just take the smile down, and you can actually add in a little bit of a frown. Just a little bit, not too much. Just incorporate some, and then you can keep that frown cranked up a little bit throughout the whole process. So that's good for eh. We'll just set a key. Just press S on the keyboard, key all the channels, and then we'll listen again for the next shape. Okay, so I hear the V at frame 6, so I'm going to go to frame 5. I'm just going to zero everything out and then close the mouth. Because the V shape works best with the mouth with everything just zeroed, and you just use the V. In fact, for any one of these mouth shapes, they're better used with nothing else, none of these other channels on. Even the swirl Y, you can turn that right off. And it's good all by itself. And I'll just key that. Okay, so I don't really want that to happen over one frame. It's best to have a minimum of a 2 frame separation between any two mouth shapes. So what I would do here is just err on the side of too early than too late. So what we can do is take that first mouth shape that we created and just move it back. That way we get 2 frames in here. Sometimes you have no choice and you'll have to animate 2 mouth shapes 1 frame apart. If you do that, just make sure they're not extremely different from each other, otherwise it'll pop too much. We're listening for the R in every. Okay, so let's go for an R-shaped mouth. We can use this one. You don't have to crank it all the way up. This is more for ooh sounds, but for R shapes we can crank it up to maybe about halfway, approximately halfway, and that works well for R. So again, like I always do, I'm just going to scrub through and check it. Okay, so I'm just going to go one more frame and just open the mouth for the next E. Don't forget that translate Y swirl comes in really handy. So I'll just open the mouth and get rid of the OR, and we'll set a key on that. And let's see what we got. Okay, now he's going to go into an N for the every one, the N sound for 1. So we'll just bring his mouth, we'll just close it up. And really for N, it's a consonant, and it's something like this. So for the N, we can really just close his mouth a little bit, and that'll work. Scrub through our animation and see what we have so far. Each mouth shape should sort of blend into the next. Try to avoid setting mouth shapes 1 frame apart, unless they're close together in shape, and try and get them 1 frame before the sound actually happens. He says everyone signed, so if he's going to go from N, in the everyone, and then he's going to go from N to S. When he's in the end mouth shape, it almost looks like the S shape, so he can kind of start saying it. You can use the cringe. The cringe comes in handy for things like S, so that works out nice. It also works out well for T, S and T, so that's more like consonants up here. Okay, so on frame 16 we hear the A. Well, it's actually an I, but the way he's saying it's signed. It's going to just be an open mouth. So we hear it on frame 16, but we want to have it occur on frame 15. So let's just move this S shape back one. We can get rid of the cringe, or let's just keep it for now and see how it looks. So that's probably okay. And then he says signed for quite a while. If we play it.
Everyone signed?
So we can kind of start closing the mouth here, back into the N shape. So we can have that happen over 3 or 4 frames. And then a lot of times when the character ends a word in a T or a D, we can kind of pop the mouth back open a little bit just to emphasize that last letter. So he says signed, and we're just gonna pop the mouth open a little bit. Okay, now there's a bit of a space between signed and the next word, which is good.
Yes.
Yes, sorry, it's yes. Now what we don't want to do is have the mouth hold in the last mouth shape or the last phoneme. We don't want to have it hold like that until the next word is spoken. So what we often will do here, you can hold it for maybe 3 frames or so, and then just sort of close it up a little bit. If there's a really long pause in between words, you'd want to actually close it up. But because he says the next word fairly soon, we'll half close it and keep him ready to start talking again. Okay, so he starts saying this ye for yes. So we can actually get that going pretty early. And it drags on, the yes, the Y sound drags on pretty early, so we can use that cringe again just to get that E sound. You don't want to use it too much because then he starts looking like he's really angry. So for E, we can open up, we'll just separate the teeth a little bit. Yes. So open it up for the and yes. And then at this point, we need an S sound for the yes, so we can go back to where there was another S and just copy and paste it. So there's an S sound, and there's the mouth shape for it that we used. So when we just copy it, there's the S. We hear it happening at frame 42, so we'll stick it on frame 41. Okay, so we'll hold the S. You can hear him pronouncing that S for a while. And then there's quite a bit of time before he says good. The S is already holding for 4 or 5 frames here. So we'll actually just put the mouth down and we'll increase the frown a little bit so we don't want him smiling really. And then he's going to go into good. Okay, so I'll stop it there. This character is a little bit heavier than the mannequin, so you have to play blast your work to see it. And that's pretty standard in production. So we'll just play blast what we did so far. And I encourage you to continue play blasting just to check your work. I'm not saving this one to a file, this is just to check it. Make sure you have your audio on so you can hear it in the movie file.
Everyone signed? Yes.
So this is a rough draft, or blocked. This isn't too bad right now.
Everyone signed? Yes.
After the signed, remember I mentioned having the jaw pop open a little bit? That's a little bit too much. I would keep that really subtle, and you can tone it down in the graph editor with the rotate X on the mouth control. So what we want to do next is, after we get all the lip sync animated, just for this particular exercise, I want to show you how to create some accents and show you how to make some good acting choices with dialogue. When we're doing character animation and we're posing the entire body, I know right now we're just doing the head, but when we're posing the entire body, we want to place our gestures on the vowels of the most emphasized word. So for this particular clip,
Everyone sign? Yes. Good. On we go.
it'd be yes and on. The vowel in yes is E, so you would pose them right on the E in yes. You would try and hit that pose. He would go into the most extreme pose right on the vowel of yes, which is E. And then he would probably accent maybe his head or his hands. There would be small little accents here and there. So those accents are just small movements that a character will do with his head, his hands, or any other part of his body. But there's smaller movements. He'll hold that extreme pose and just do smaller movements. So it's a variation of that extreme pose. Those are accents. And then he would go into the next big pose change on we go, right?
On we go.
Or the word on. The vowel in the word on is O, so you would go into the next big pose on the O in on. So the word yes and the word on, that's where he would change poses, major poses. In between those two pose changes, there can be accents. So that's what we're doing here. We're doing accents. But I think for this exercise, we can just pose on every vowel, just to get you practicing getting the character to move on the vowel of dialogue. And then in the next class, when we do gesturing, we'll only accent in between the major poses.
Everyone sign?
Okay, so let's get him to accent on the word signed. The vowel in signed is I, so we're going to have him actually move on the I. Okay, so what I generally do is scrub until I hear that I. So I'll find the vowel, and just like the lip sync, I'll go a frame before the actual I sound. So let's just key the head there, just to place a marker so we know where we want the accent to be. And then I'm going to use my Alt less than keys, my keyboard, and just go back maybe 3 or 4 frames just for the starting point of that movement. Okay, now I'll actually set the accent. And it's just going to be a small head movement. Okay, so now the word yes, the E in yes is where we would place the accent. So instead of accenting on yes, let's just turn his head. Okay, so we'll just go a frame before we hear the E pronounced the most, and we'll place a key on the head. And we'll go back. We're going to do a head turn here, so let's do it over 6 frames. So we'll go back 3, place a key, go back to our keyframe where we want to turn the head, and we'll go ahead of that 3, and let's just do a head turn there. So I'll dip the head down a little bit to get our arc, and then we'll go to the last frame of the head turn, and let's complete the turn, and I'll just rotate the head a little bit in Z, so we get something like this. And let's give that a 5 or 6 frame cushion. So we'll just rotate it a tiny bit more in both dimensions, all 3 dimensions that we used for the head turn. Okay, so on good, we'll just do a little accent, which is just a little nod. So we'll find the vowel in the word good, and it's O. So it happens right on frame 61. We hear it on frame 61, so we'll go 1 frame earlier to frame 60, set a key, because that's where we want it to occur. And I'm just going to go back about 3 frames and set another key, and then we'll just rotate the head a tiny bit. He yells on, so that's a pronounced dialogue word. And obviously the vowel in on is O, so that's when we would go into a big pose. But we'll just do an accent here. So again, I'm going to set the key right where I want it to occur, and then I'll just go back 3 frames so the head sticks. And we'll just do another little accent. So this is where the creativity comes in animation, where we're using the animation principles and we're timing things on the vowels. What words do we pose on? What words do we accent on? The combination of all that, how we put it together. It's where the decision making comes in, basically. Okay, so I have these accents. What I would like to do is cushion them, give them a nice little ease at the end. So after each one, I'll just go 5 or 6 frames down the timeline, and this is where I can get into my graph editor. Let's open up my graph editor here. And we'll start setting keys for the cushion. So I'm using the head, and it's only rotate. We're only going to rotate the head. So now you can see our movement here. This is the accent on the X, Y, and Z. We can bring these down a little bit just to have it happen a little more, or we can bring these up just to make it happen less. We'll just have it cushion into the pose that he eventually ends up into. So you can bring these keys up a little bit and then bend them just to get a more gradual curve here. I'll just scrub over that, see how that looks. And you see how you just get a nice little cushion, just so it doesn't stop too hard. Alright, then we have our head turn. I'm just going to turn this off for a minute. Follow the tip of the nose with your eye, scrub over the head turn. It should be an arc, not a V shape. The way we get that is to go to our rotate X values, and this is what causes the head to move back and forth. We'll just break this tangent so it starts to dip down right away. So we get a nice little dip. I'm actually going to leave that one more flat. And we already put a little cushion on this, but it needs a little bit with what we'll do is just move this X up a little, this rotate X up a little, and just get a little cushion on that as well. Need a more gradual cushion on the rotate Y. That's just the head turn. So you just want a really nice gradual incline on that, which will give us a nice slow into the last pose. And actually his head turn starts pretty abruptly, so I'm going to give that a bit of an ease in as well. So I'm just going to set a key before all that. And we'll affect all 3 of these rotation values. We just want gradual for an ease. So let's just scrub over that and see how that works out. Okay, well it accelerates pretty quick when we get into the rotate Z, but I'll let you guys refine that further. Do something like that. Okay, we'll turn this back on. Good. Okay, so we'll just set a frame down the timeline, maybe 4 or 5 frames, maybe 6 frames after the movement on good, the accent on good. And we'll just give that a little bit of a cushion as well. So we could do it this way. We can select all the keys from the key that we put down for a cushion all the way to the next movement. And just do this sort of thing. We want a gradual progression from this keyframe to this keyframe. So we don't want to check. We want to have our hold remain intact. So we select this whole section here. You just bring it down, and now we have our gradual cushion here. All right. So if we scrub over that, and there's a nice cushion there, and we'll set another key to cushion that. And we'll just bring everything up on this side. So it happens a little more, but just very gradual. Alright, let's set a key at the end. And now what we want to do is get rid of all these areas that are just very flat. He's going to be completely static. He won't be moving at all. Just go into some of these channels here and just give it a really slight bend, just so that there's a bit of a moving hold. I'm going to set a key at frame 1, so we're going to have a little bit of a moving hold at the beginning. We'll just start at the beginning here. So I'm going to give it a slight bend in the rotate Z. Now place your time marker right in between these keys, and then start bending it and see how much it moves. So you can see that might be an okay moving hold. I don't really put moving holds on the translate Y because I don't want his head to spin. Usually it's just X and Z for the most part. So there's a little bit of a moving hold. I don't know if you can see it. It's just really subtle. As long as it's not static. And I'm just going to go through all the X and all the flat areas of the Z and X rotations. You can see I only have those 2 selected. And just give it really subtle bends. You can do one at a time like that. You can also just select those two keyframes and hit spline. You may have to tone it down a bit, like that might be too much for a moving hold. Spline kind of gets you there a little bit, and then you have to tone it down. Or you can just grab these and just move them yourself, just a tiny bit. So I'll try spline on this one. That might be okay. So now when we play through it, or when we scrub through it, I'm just looking at the areas in between the accents now. I just want to see that there's a moving hold there and the head's not completely still. Alright, so let's just play blast that. Don't forget to turn your sound on before you play blast, or you won't hear it in your file. And we'll just do a play blast with not save to file, just remove temporary files so we don't make a video. We're just checking here. You do your lip sync first, then you do your body movements. In this case it's just the head because we're doing accents today. And then you do your facial animation after, which is basically just eyes, lids, and brows.
Everyone signed? Yes. Good. On we go.
So some of that's a little raw and needs to be refined quite a bit. I just did that quickly. This is just a demonstration. Play with the speed of some of those accents. You can get those to be quite a bit faster on some of them. So at this point we can do our eye direction. Usually I do my eye direction, then the blinks. So I know he turns his head the other way after, so I'm just going to have him looking this way, and let's assume everyone's down below. Now you can move these individual eyes if you need to. In this case I think I'm going to move that over a little bit. And then you can just select all these. Easy to turn them to the side and select it all, drag a box. Just going to key that up frame 1. So on this accent I'm just going to actually give him a little eye dart. So these would be one frame apart. It's just called an eye dart. I know we call them eye darts sometimes. It's just a little eye movement. It's also nice sometimes to, when the character starts to turn his head to look somewhere else, their eyes stick to where they were looking. And usually the eyes don't lead, but sometimes they do. You have to think about if the eyes are going to look first and then he moves, or sometimes they move, they start to move, but the eyes stick to where they were looking before. And the reasons why you would do that are different. You have to think about why they would be doing that. Say somebody's getting into a fight with somebody and they're trying to keep their eye on somebody, then they might start to turn their head but keep looking at that person and then blink and change eye direction. If somebody's teaching or something like that, they might be thinking faster than they're moving. It's just an example. So they might actually look and then turn their head. A lot of it comes from the attitude that the character is in. You know, what the eyes do, in large part what the brain's doing. So in this case I'm going to have the eyes lag behind. So I'll set a key here as the head starts to move. And I'll just step down the timeline, animate the eyes back to where they were a little bit. And then over one frame we'll key it over. And don't forget, if you change eye direction you might want to put this back. Oftentimes you'll want to use whichever side you're looking at. If you have to adjust the left or right eye, you want to do it on the side that they're looking. So it'd be something like this. Otherwise things get really distorted really quick. Okay. So I can see some animation happening here that I don't want to happen, and that's on the left eye. That'd be this one. So we're just going to bring that down flat. If you see that happening, just bring these down flat. They shouldn't be animating over time like that. It's my fault because I didn't key all the controls at one time. I was just keying the master eye control. If you're going to be moving the individual ones around, you really should do is drag a box over the entire thing, or just shift select all these and set a key on all of them every time you move any of the eyes at all. Okay, so what we have so far is something like this. And that's where my blink's going to go. So right in this dead space here, he's just holding. So we'll set a key, go one frame down timeline, just over one frame. We'll do a little eye dart. Okay, so when this head moves, you can counter animate the eyes if you want them to stay where they're looking. Some eye controls, you don't have to counter animate them, they just stay put where they're at, no matter where the head turns. But you can run into problems with that as well. So there's cons and pros to having the eye controls move with the head or not with the head. Okay, we'll just leave it at that for now. Let's throw in some blinks. Now let's go to the face controls. We'll throw in our blinks and then we'll do the brows. You don't want to overblink. Overblinking just makes the character look like it's really windy outside, or somebody's throwing sand in their eyes or something. It's distracting. So actually, before we even start blinking, let's get him into his initial facial position. So yeah, you want to get him into the initial facial position first. Remember when we were talking about facial animation, you get that line that runs through. There's a nice line that runs through, as if you had a unibrow. So always be thinking about that when you're posing the eyebrows. We'll key that at frame 1. Now we can go and do our blinks. Okay. So right where the eyes shift there, I'm going to put a blink there. So I'll set a key on both those keys where the eyes shift. And then I'll just go back 1, set a key, and then forward 2. So we're going to have the eye close in 1 frame, hold for 1 frame, and then open in 2 frames. So we just set the keys first, and then let's go in the graph editor. I'm going to select the right upper lid and the left upper lid. And if you remember, to get the eyes closed properly on this character, it's 0.9. So we'll just select those 2 keys in the middle where I know this is where the eyes are going to be closed. And we'll go up to this text field here and punch in 0.9. Okay, then we have this. And if you want to, because we're keying all the channels, you can go down to right brow up down, left brow up down, and you can select those controls as well right at the blink, and you can bring them down a little. That always adds a nice little touch. Don't overdo that because it'll look like the brows are bouncing off his eyes. So that's so subtle that it's almost unnoticeable. So we'll just go down a little more, and you can do one more than the other too. So that's something to play with. You want to make wise choices when placing your blinks as well. Well-placed blinks make a huge difference. Whether you may think it doesn't, but it really does. So we'll go to our blinks. We only have 1 blink in there so far. But a lot of times it's good to always think about anticipating in any way that you can. You can anticipate an entire pose with just a blink and an eyebrow movement. Let's look at this last accent where he says, "On we go." So let's anticipate that accent with a blink. We're just going to copy and paste it over there right before the accent. So again, I think I showed you this before. You can drag select over the entire blink and Control C on your keyboard to copy. Go to the frame that you want it to start at and then Control V on the timeline here. It'll copy it in the graph editor. I placed that blink in that exact spot because he's going to blink before he accents, and the blink sort of anticipates the accent. See how he blinks first and then the eyes open on the accent. And then we can even give that a bit of a cushion. So I'm just going to set a keyframe on the face here just after the blink, and what we can do is go back to the open eye frame here and just close that a little more. We can go to this one and open it a little more. We'll set that to spline, and that'll just get a nice little cushion on the lids. And then you can go to the brows, the up down brow controls. Okay, so they weren't keyed with this blink, so we'll just go here on the timeline, press S, and just go to each one of these and keyframe it. Okay, now that we have those keys in there, go to the right and left brow up and down controls. And for that blink, we can bring the brows down a little and then have them ease up like with the blink. And you can even play with it a little bit. You can have the brows happen after the blink, so you can grab these. Don't do it on the timeline because it grabs all the face controls, but if you go in the graph editor and you just have these two channels selected, you can grab those brow controls and just drag them down a little bit, say 3 frames. You'll see another key appear here. And that'll just cause the eyebrows to come up after the lids. So it's nice to offset facial expression elements as well. And then if you want to get even more intricate, you can just grab, say, the right eyebrow and have that happen even later just by dragging it, shift middle mouse button, dragging it down the timeline. You'd probably want to tone down that ease a little bit. Bend the curve, move the key down. You see that right brow just comes up a little bit later than everything else, and that's just a nice way to do some facial animation. I'll see you in the next class. It's going to be lip sync, dialogue, and gestures. So save this file, and we're going to use the lip sync from this class in the next exercise.